You're watching Power Media Network.
I could be running or I'm chasing you, but I won't. Cause I got better things to do. Rather spend my precious time chasing somebody who loves me too. If I got $1 for every time you slam the door, I would be the richest girl alive, life. If you hadn't run away every time I asked you stay, you would sleep right next to me tonight. And you didn't know me, all you wanted was a game to play, and you couldn't handle that about your magics and your side chicks. I'm a winner,
Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience is fruitful. Please feel free to visit our website to find out how you can join our growing family. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. Also, share so others may enjoy as well. And we hope you would consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
Hey everybody, happy Friday Junior. I always have to stop for a second, like, am I saying this correctly? Happy Friday Junior. Welcome to this week's episode of Nicole D Vick Live. I am Dr. See, I got it right this time. Nicole D Vick. Yay! It is Black History Month. I'm so excited. It's raining out here, so if you are in Los Angeles, be safe because it's like that nonstop rain. It's not that little sprinkle. It's like raining. So please be careful and be safe. I think it'll stop tomorrow, so we won't have rain on Friday. This week, I wanted to talk about the Black workforce because the theme for Black History Month was or is African Americans and labor. Last week, I was like African Americans in labor, and I was like, that's a different conversation. African Americans and labor. And so, ever since we got here, we've been working. Okay. And I want to talk about that, especially in light of what's going on with this current administration. Some stuff is happening and people's livelihoods is being impacted, and it's a thing. So I want to kind of talk about that this week. Before I do, though, earlier today, I was on a podcast episode or a video podcast with Dr. James Golden. If you have LinkedIn, go look up Dr. James. I believe his middle initial is B, James B. Golden. Check it out. We had a really good conversation about folks that work in the institution of public health at any level, local, federal, state, and sort of the challenges that Black folk face in those spaces. And so take a watch, listen, etc. on that, because I loved how he weaved in a book that he was reading, a new biography on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He also had a song, which interestingly enough, the song he chose, I also hold close to my heart. It Sounds of Blackness, Optimistic. If you know that song, every time I hear it, tears immediate, So I loved how he kind of weaved in stuff within his video podcast and his topic. So definitely check out that episode that I'm on and all the other ones as well. So just shout out a fellow doctor and a fellow podcaster. So I am going to be talking about Black folk at work. African Americans have been the backbone of America's labor force, building industries, shaping unions, driving economic progress, often while literally standing in the face of systemic barriers. In this episode, I'm going to talk about Black labor from, again, when we came here to sharecropping through the civil rights movement. I'm not going to spend a lot of time like highlighting those key points, but I'm going to go back a little bit so that we understand what we could potentially be facing today. As I told you last week, I shared that the theme for Black History Month this year is African Americans and labor. And that helps us focus on the many and profound ways that work and working intersect with our experiences as Black people. Indeed, work is at the very core of much of Black history and culture. I mean, yeah, it could be that traditional agricultural labor of enslaved ancestors, like my great grandmother's parents were enslaved and the folks before them. Black educators, teachers, scholars, people that work in our trades, all of those work experiences are valid and valuable, but I want to talk about that a little bit. So this theme this year sets out to highlight and celebrate the important impact of this work. One of the things that I was like, oh, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this. In my dissertation, remember y'all, because I've been said this about 11 times. I'm so proud of that thing. I talked about the psychological safety of Black folk in local health departments, right? But I had to set the stage. So if you've never written a dissertation, chapter 2, you kind of have to set the stage for like, why am I talking about this topic? And so I had to talk about sort of like, well, Black workers in general and their unique experiences. And I'm going to read this quote to you, or I'm going to read to you what I wrote. The unique experience of Black workers in the United States dates back to slavery. This is from an article by King and other authors, King, Hall, Johnson, Carter, Burroughs, Samuel, back in 2023. This is an article called Research on Anti-Black Racism in Organizations, Insights, Ideas, and Considerations. This article was submitted to the Journal of Business and Psychology. They talked about how mass labor and production led to organizational and management practices that are still used today. Think about it, the logistics behind it, right? You have workers out in the field picking cotton, whatever they're doing, right? There's that overseer. Somebody got to make sure the work gets done. Somebody has to push people to continue the work. Somebody has to manage that stuff. What if someone gets sick? What happens? So there's that. And then there's the owners, right? There's someone that owns the entire infrastructure. So at the time, the goal was to understand how to best extract labor, knowledge, and other resources from Black workers. And what I said is, it is against this context that anti-Blackness in the workforce persists. So conversations around wages, around how to manage people, all those things had to originate from somewhere. And these authors say it originated from all the logistics around managing a plantation and the people that actually did the labor on that plantation. I had never thought about that until I read that in that journal article. And so it was really, really interesting to me. And I'm like, what? The idea of a supervisor, the idea of a manager, how we are measuring work output, all of those things had to have come from somewhere. And their assertion is that it came from the institution of chattel slavery in the United States. How many of y'all knew that? Because I don't, like I said, I don't think I had really thought through all the logistics around that whole institution until I saw that quote in that journal article. So remember I told you last week that last year I was really intrigued about Black folk at work and like, are there specific institutions that Black people work in? And I just was really curious, and I had done a series of videos on LinkedIn, just kind of posting in preparation for the release of Triumph in the Trenches. And I remember at the time I had found a really cool article that kind of highlighted the Black workforce in Los Angeles. So back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I was starting to do some research again for this episode. And I went on this website by an organization in Los Angeles called SCOPE. SCOPE is a nonprofit. SCOPE stands for Strategic Concepts in Organizing and Policy Education. So they are a grassroots organization that helps to create social and economic power for low income, female, immigrant, Black, and Brown communities in Los Angeles. And so their thought process, one of the things that they were talking about on this website is we got to understand, like, in order to understand the economic conditions in South LA today, we kind of have to understand like how this stuff came to be in the first place, right? Nothing sort of happens in this world in isolation, right? There's usually a reason or a process that created a situation. So what they started with is World War II. There were labor shortages, and passage of anti-discrimination laws, which opened up opportunities for workers in the steel, aerospace, car, tire, and furniture manufacturing industries, and public sector jobs, which is really interesting for me because right now we're actually seeing a specific sector of the public sector federally where their jobs are being sort of I don't know, people are a little bit worried and scared about what's going to happen to their careers in those public sector spaces. So as Black folk migrated to Los Angeles, they were able to go into those industries and to find meaningful work. I also recall reading an article where saying that Black home ownership in Los Angeles during that time was relatively high because people were able to earn a good living and be able to pay for a home and all those sorts of things. And in fact, this is what it says. For the first time, Black workers in South LA could access middle class union jobs. Now, union jobs are important because they have protections, right? Seniority, things like a 40-hour work week. What happens when you get sick? Do you have paid time off? So those are really good jobs where people could do a honest day's work and be able to afford their lives, right? So they would work at places like Firestone, Goodyear, and General Motors. At its peak, the manufacturing industry employed 24.2% of Black men and 18% of Black women in Los Angeles County. The war also opened up opportunities for Black women in public sector clerical work. So they could go work for the city or the county or the gas company or the electric company or the phone company and have, again, a decent standard of living. And by 1960, almost 16% of employed Black women in LA worked in the clerical sector. So they were able to come in and have jobs that had benefits, potentially pensions, had health insurance, and all those other things. Now, when things started to go funny style, like, whoa, what happened? What happened? What happened? Around the 1960s. Companies, and this is the reality, companies were like, it's costing too much to do business here. Let's go to Mexico. Let's go overseas. It's cheaper over there. We don't want to do business here anymore. And so they would leave. Or they would go to other states or whatever. They would relocate. I'll just say that. They would relocate. These businesses would say, it's too expensive here. We go. And then so what happened was then there was a lot of folks that were without jobs. So it says within the span of a year, between 1963 and 1964, 28 industrial manufacturing plants left South Central and East Los Angeles. And between 1979, I was born in 1978, between 1979 and 1982, it was estimated that 70,000 jobs in South LA were lost. Okay? And to put this into context, all of LA County lost 89,000 manufacturing jobs in the 10-year period following the recession. So what happened is, as those manufacturing union jobs went away, they were replaced with low-wage, non-union work in South LA. So like the garment industry, the apparel industry, service industry jobs, customer service jobs. So they were low-wage, inadequate benefits. And so you put people in the situation of economic instability. And that's kind of the situation that I would say in South Los Angeles that we're still in now. I don't think we have recovered from that. So it's always interesting to understand like what happened to cause the things that are happening today. Further information here says, the decline of job standards in South LA and the disinvestment that follows has resulted in Supervisorial District 2, which I live in, have the lowest jobs to person ratio in LA County, meaning there are more people than there are jobs. Okay. So there's a lot of unemployment or underemployment in this community. So it says not only are there physically fewer jobs located in South LA as a result of industry loss and the disinvestment, but residents encounter a number of systemic barriers in accessing a sustainable livelihood. So again, like where these people like supposed to earn a decent living and then in turn afford their housing and other costs, right? Like it's really just a really, really rough time. And so that's a little bit of the history of the working world for Black folk, at least in South LA. I can imagine similar things happened in other urban centers in the country, across the country, as industry left. So you used to be able to graduate from high school and go work at a Goodyear factory for 30 years and make a decent living, have a house, have children, a family, and take care of your life. And those things are not necessarily the same or true anymore for us in these urban areas. So we're gonna go to commercial, and when we come back, I want to share what I learned. I was also looking up an organization that is actually based in South Los Angeles that focuses on improving the outcome of Black workers in Los Angeles. So we're gonna go to a break, and then we're gonna come back. See you in a little bit. We are back, and we're talking about the Black workforce, and I'm giving you some insight on the past as we talk about the president into the future. And I think it's a really important conversation given what's happening in the current administration. So I want to talk to you about an organization. So I told you guys, in South LA in the Crenshaw district. And back in the day, I used to take the bus and the train to work. And so sometimes I'd have to walk to the bus station. And I remember, I'm looking around, in my neighborhood. Sometimes when you live somewhere, but you drive a lot, you don't often pay attention to the businesses like along the way. So I stand in the bus stop, I have nothing else to do but look around. And I'm like, hey, this is an organization called the LA Black Workers Center. Like, what is that? And so I immediately, started to kind of look up what was going on there, what they were all about. And so I want to share some information with you and even some of their research. And let's have a conversation about what's going on. So the LA Black Workers Center, they have a website, so I would encourage you to visit. The vision is we envision a world where Black workers thrive, a world where workplaces are accountable to us and our rights, and we all have equitable access to meaningful, sustained, and quality employment. Their mission is to increase access to quality jobs. So remember, I just told you now, the jobs have changed in our community, reduce employment discrimination, and improve industries that employ Black workers through action and unionization. I was hoping to have someone come on from a union to speak, and maybe one day we'll get her. She wasn't able to make it because I do want to talk about that. I think that's something else to dig deep into, like why unions are so very important, not just for Black workers, of course, but what protections they offer and how they can kind of be a safety net for employees as a protective factor from things like discrimination or wage theft and all sorts of things. Okay. So I have some information from their website, and they talk about the fact that high poverty rates are a result of occupational segregation. So we talked about that just earlier with the statistics, how when those really good manufacturing jobs went away, they were replaced with, customer service or service industry jobs. And so in a sense, folks got sort of pinned into a very specific lane of occupations. Does that mean that there's only a certain type of Black job? You know, somebody very important in this country talked about Black jobs, and I'm like, no, we are everywhere. We are doctors, we are attorneys, we're nurses, we are all things. But at the same time, because of the disinvestment, the oppression, and all the other things, we have unfortunately been sort of segued or sort of primed to only work in certain low-wage industries. In Los Angeles County, the unemployment rate for African Americans is 20%. In the Crenshaw neighborhood of South Los Angeles, Black unemployment is even higher at 22%. Of those who are employed, 30% of Black workers in Los Angeles are in low-wage industries, earning $12 per hour or less. Now, it'd be interesting to see, because I don't know exactly when this was published, with that whole fight for 15, and I think some wages are now up to $20, if that has made any difference in the sort of earning power of Black workers. Even those equality union jobs rely on retail and low-wage work between jobs to make ends meet. In Los Angeles, Blacks constitute less than 9% of the population, but 35% of the low-wage workforce. Okay, so again, hey, what does that mean in regards to being able to afford your life, to be able to buy buy a home, or have safe, affordable housing, be able to buy your food? Eggs are expensive now, gas is expensive. So what happens when 35% of a population or community is low wage workforce, right? And we talked about why these things have happened. The LA Black Worker Center advocates for and supports workers who need help protecting their rights on the job. And then they're also going to talk really deeply, you know, about racism and the impact that racism has on Black workers. And then why the Black Workers Center exists, to engage in strategies that focus on transforming the systems that allow for exploitation and discrimination of our communities. Black folks have the right to quality jobs, fair wages, and dignity and respect in the workplace. And they're looking for solutions that meet the immediate safety and stability needs of families. So all of this conversation about our work, from the time we were working hard for no money to now, you know, hey, we had an opportunity, we had manufacturing jobs and we're able to thrive. And then those manufacturing jobs said, it costs too much to do business here. We going somewhere else with little, you know, a little bit more looser employee laws. I can pay them a little less. We're just going to leave and leave folks out in the cold. Just brings to mind all of the public health issues that I know of, the social determinants of health, things like housing. So when your wages are low, it makes it harder to afford your housing. So you may have to buy or purchase or have rent in an area where the housing may be less than ideal. There may be crime in the community. So you have to make choices about where you live based on what you can afford. And if you can't afford, then you have to live in housing that may not be the best, right? You may have to have more than one family in a household. And so when you don't have access to quality and safe housing, that puts all other types of things into play as well in regards to your health. When your wages are low, your economic stability is also sort of, you know, you're kind of on shaky ground if something happens. And I remember teaching my undergrad students about this concept, where I used to make them play a scenario game, and they were a low wage worker, and the emergency happens. They got a ticket, or oops, their tire is flat, or their kid needs to go to the dentist. And it's like, where is this money supposed to come from to take care of all these things that happen in your life? And so when you have a situation where your housing choices are poor, your economic stability is very, you know, you're on shaky ground, that causes you to have stress. You are chronically stressed. And what we know about chronic stress is that over time, your body starts to break down in response to that chronic stress. So this is why it's really important to make sure people have the ability to earn a good living wage so that they can take care of their housing needs, they can take care of their families, they can purchase good, healthy food, they can take a vacation, they have paid time off to go to the doctor, they have access to a whole host of things that will actually help improve the standard of their lives. And so, from a public health perspective, that is why we care about things like employment and wages and housing and economic stability. How can we make sure that families are able to take care of their own lives and to live healthy and safe lives? I even was able to draw a link between economic or workforce or jobs and education. Do you know that in many jurisdictions, I'm sure almost all of them, that your school system is funded by property taxes? And so if you don't have or enough people that own property to pay property taxes, well, how are the schools being funded? And so it's just a whole host of things that can really have a huge impact on the standard of life in communities. So I hope that was informative for you and helpful for you to understand, like, well, how do we have a situation where there are a lot of people in a given community and they're literally the only jobs are food, right? There are restaurants or like security jobs or other low wage like clerks. And it's really hard for people to find jobs that have a meaningful wage and protections like paid time off, vacation time, healthcare, and whatnot. I'm hoping that we can collectively figure out ways to, I don't know, either figure out new industries to get folks in, try to, push them towards things like plumbing, electrical work, HVAC, like those types of service jobs that will always be important to have. It's a really interesting conversation that I've been thinking a lot about since last year, right? When I was really thinking about this book, and I'm like, what does the Black workforce look like, and what will it look like in the future? I will say that I'm in some Facebook groups that are full of public service folks, public servants in many capacities, and everyone is really fearful and afraid based on what's been going on in the White House with some of the executive orders that folks are, hey, if you want to leave, you can leave. And people are like, but I don't know what's going to happen to my job. How am I going to take care of myself? And so I feel like these conversations need to happen because we may end up with a lot of people who will end up unemployed, who will need to find other work. But if there is no work, what will they do? How will they earn a living and take care of themselves and their families? So this conversation is really important, especially with the erasure of DEI, because, I know, folks are like, well, that's fine, get rid of it. We didn't need it anyway. We should be focused on merit. But you have to understand that if we were focused on merit, we probably would not be DEI, but we weren't doing it the right way. We weren't focusing on merit. People were doing stuff and getting jobs, and they probably shouldn't have had them. And a lot of people were shut out of opportunity. So it's like, what are we now going to do when it becomes sort of, I'm going to say legal to say, yeah, we don't want to hire you because you're disabled, or no, no, we're going to actually hire this person. You're not a good fit to the organization. When those protections go away, how do we make sure that people that want to work can find meaningful work? Very hard conversations to have, very important questions to be thinking about. I'm going to hopefully see if I can get someone to come in from the union. Maybe I can even try to reach out to the LA Black Workers Center, because I would like to learn more about the work that they're doing. And I'm glad that this organization exists to bring to light these very important issues. I remember Slauson Girl, who is a local journalist here in Los Angeles, going to construction sites. She would go. Construction can be a very lucrative job. And she was like, I don't see any Black people. Like, why? What's happening here? So those are the kind of conversations that we need to be having and thinking about for ourselves and in our communities. One final thing I'll say before I close is that it also kind of reminds me of why a lot of us go into entrepreneurship, right? We go into business for ourselves because we were not able to actually find meaningful employment in the workforce. So it's like, well, you know what? I know how to cook. I'm about to go ahead and make this happen. Or I know how to do some other things. And so then that became a whole sort of thing for our community too. I know we tend to have a lot of people that go into business for themselves, which is awesome, but everyone doesn't have the capacity or the skill set to do that. So then again, how do we make sure that they have meaningful jobs where they can earn a living wage and take care of their families? All right, y'all. Next week, I have a special guest coming on. She's been here before, and I'm bringing her back. We're really excited to have her on. But other than that, we're going to close it on out today. Hopefully, this was very informative and you learned something new. Maybe you didn't know some of this information before. In the meantime, you can visit me on my website, www.NicoleDvick.com. Hey, I have all sorts of things there, like my books. My most recent one called Triumph in the Trenches, which is about Black folk at work. And then my other two, Pushing Through, Finding the Light in Every Lesson, and my journal, Push Through 52 Weeks of Light in Tough Times. Pick those up off my website. I can get those to you, sign if you want me to, and I can mail them out to you ASAP. I'm also on social media. You can pick me up on LinkedIn, probably more LinkedIn than anything else. I was told not to say that I don't have nothing to say. And that is true. It's not that I don't have anything to say. I do not feel compelled to say much of anything at this time. As you all know, I am really focused on my recovery. I am now out of my boot, not 100% out of it, but they have put me in an ankle brace. So they're really slowly getting me to being able to walk. And I think what my mind is occupied with at this time is that. Like, Nicole, you need to be upright, baby, on your own 2 feet. And so it's not that I don't have nothing to say, because listen, I can talk. It's just, I think for some reason, it's really just at this moment in time, I am not compelled. But I did an episode today with Dr. James B. Golden. You can watch that. That was really, I had a great time with him. And I'll be back. Just give me enough time. I'll be back, and then you won't be able to shut me up. You'll be like, why is she always talking? See, appreciate the silence for the moment. But you can always catch me here every Thursday on the Pyro Media Network. Yay. All right, y'all. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Love y'all. Bye.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.